Every city street, a story.
Welcome to North American Crime Case.
What shuts down inside a man before he destroys the people who trust him most? How does a husband remain inside a house with the bodies of his wife, his 3 children, and the family dog, while sending calm messages designed to convince relatives that everyone is safe? How does a respected physical therapist, youth soccer coach, husband, and father become responsible for wiping out his entire household? For weeks, Anthony Todt stayed inside a rented Florida home while his family lay dead nearby. Relatives kept calling. Patients searched for answers. Deputies stood outside the property and left without entering. Meanwhile, federal investigators were closing in on Anthony for an entirely different crime. By the time authorities opened the door, the family had been dead for roughly 2.5 weeks. This is the case of a perfect family image hiding fraud, financial ruin, conflicting confessions, and 4 murders. Before we begin, subscribe to North American Crime Case and tell us where you are watching from. We examine every major detail, from the first warning sign to the final sentence. Long before the murders, the Todt family appeared stable, successful, and close. They came from a small Connecticut town where people knew each other and personal reputations carried weight. Anthony was a physical therapist. He was a large man with a friendly personality and a reputation for treating patients with care. He had operated his own physical therapy practice for well over a decade. Patients regularly recommended him. He worked with people recovering from painful injuries, and many believed he was skilled at his job. Outside his clinic, Anthony coached youth soccer and volunteered his time with children who needed extra support. Nothing about his public image suggested what would later happen. His wife had known him since high school. Their relationship began when they were teenagers, continued for years, and eventually became a marriage that lasted almost 2 decades. She also trained as a physical therapist and earned a master's degree. After their children were born, she stepped away from professional work and devoted herself to raising and educating them. She homeschooled all 3 children. Their oldest child was a 13-year-old boy. Their second son was 11. Their youngest child was a 4-year-old girl. The family also had a dog that lived inside the home and formed part of their daily life. For several years, the Todts divided their time between Connecticut and Florida. Anthony continued operating his physical therapy practice in Connecticut. His wife and children lived in a planned Florida community near Orlando's major theme parks. The town had neat streets, controlled landscaping, attractive houses, and the appearance of safety. Everything about the community was designed to represent an ideal American lifestyle. The family rented a house there for close to $5,000 each month. Anthony traveled between Connecticut and Florida, often flying south during weekends to spend time with his wife and children before returning to his patients. The arrangement seemed unusual, but people believed the family had made it work. They appeared to have a long marriage, 3 healthy children, a comfortable home, and a successful business. Then, around Thanksgiving in 2019, the first signs of trouble appeared. Anthony's physical therapy office began contacting patients. Employees explained that Anthony's wife had become sick in Florida and that he needed to stay with her. Appointments would be delayed and rescheduled. The explanation sounded believable. Patients accepted the inconvenience and waited for new appointment dates. Those dates never arrived. Instead, more appointments were canceled. The office later announced that the practice would remain closed during the final 2 weeks of December. Then the clinic's telephone line stopped working. Patients who called heard a recorded message stating that the number was no longer in service. A clinic that had operated for more than 10 years suddenly disappeared without a clear explanation. Patients could not reach Anthony. Employees had little information. The practice had gone completely silent. The family had also severed its remaining residential connection to Connecticut. Their former Connecticut house had been sold. When Anthony traveled north for work, he stayed in hotels or temporary accommodation. Relatives no longer had a permanent Connecticut address where they could search for him. As far as anyone knew, Anthony, his wife, their children, and the dog were together inside the rented Florida house. Then communication stopped. Neighbors noticed that the home appeared unusually quiet, but the silence did not immediately alarm them. It was the Christmas season. They assumed the family had traveled to visit relatives or gone somewhere for the holidays. People frequently left town during that period, so an inactive house did not seem suspicious. One relative continued trying to contact the family. Anthony's wife had an aunt with whom she shared a close relationship. At first, the aunt received text messages that appeared normal. The messages claimed the family planned to travel to another part of Florida for several days. They would not carry their phones and would remain off the grid. The aunt was told not to worry if she stopped hearing from them. Later, the explanation changed. New messages stated that the family had become too sick to speak by telephone. They were supposedly able to send text messages, but no one felt well enough to hold a spoken conversation. The messages continued insisting that the family was safe. Another message came from Anthony. He claimed the family had reached northern Florida. He also said his wife had lost her phone and that they planned to remain off the grid. After that, the messages stopped. No relative would ever hear directly from Anthony's wife or the children again. At the time, no one knew who had written those messages. No one knew whether the people being discussed were still alive. Days passed. Calls went unanswered. Text messages received no response. The silence became impossible to ignore. On the 29th of December, Anthony's sister contacted the sheriff's office in the Florida county where the family lived. She requested a welfare check. She explained that the family had reportedly been sick for around a week and a half. They had been ill throughout Christmas, and she had lost contact with all of them. Her concern was clear, but she still had no idea what had happened inside the house.
I'm wondering if somebody can do a wellness check on my brother and his family. They've been really sick for probably like the past week and a half, and I can't seem to get a hold of them.
You said they were sick or something like that. You mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, they've been really sick. I guess they've had the flu. But they've had the flu probably for a couple weeks. They were really down and out during Christmas. The only one we've been able to talk to is my brother. And now, like I said, we can't get hold of any of them.
Deputies traveled to the property that same day. They knocked on the door. No one answered. The door was locked. The blinds were closed. Officers saw no movement through the windows and heard no response from inside. From the outside, the home appeared empty. The deputies found no obvious sign of forced entry, violence, or immediate danger. Without evidence supporting a forced entrance, they recorded that no one appeared to be home and left. The Todt family remained inside. The unanswered calls continued. Then, on the 10th of January, Anthony's sister contacted the sheriff's office again. This time, her fear had intensified. She reported that Anthony was connected to an active federal investigation in Connecticut. She also mentioned a disturbing statement linked to Anthony and the belief that the world would end on a specific date in late December. The family had started connecting information that did not make sense. The closed clinic, the disconnected telephone number, the unanswered calls, the strange messages, the federal investigation, the missing children, the locked house. This second call no longer sounded like an ordinary request to check on a sick family. It sounded like a warning.
Hi, I don't know who I need to speak with. I'm curious if I can have a wellness check done. I had actually called on December 29th, and I had an officer go out because I was concerned. My brother and his family, they had all been sick. But there's actually been more developments. There's actually an active FBI investigation that's happening up here in Connecticut. And I just in conversations with my sister, my sister-in-law was making a comment about, and we just kind of put it all together about basically the world ending on the 28th, and nobody has talked to them.
The landlord also contacted authorities. She had heard that relatives could not reach the family and that neighbors had not seen the children outside. The rent was overdue. An eviction notice had been placed on the front door, but the notice remained untouched. No one appeared to have entered or left the house. Every new detail pointed toward the same conclusion. Something serious had happened inside that property. At the same time, another investigation was moving toward Anthony. Federal authorities believed he had committed healthcare fraud through his physical therapy business. Investigators accused him of billing a government insurance program for appointments and treatments that had never occurred. Some claims involved patients who had stopped receiving treatment long before the dates shown in the billing records. The suspected fraudulent claims reached roughly $130,000. Federal agents had already searched Anthony's office. He had spoken with investigators in November and reportedly admitted what he had been doing. He told them he was traveling to Florida and would return. He never returned. One day before Anthony's sister made her second welfare check call, the sheriff's office received separate contact about Anthony from the FBI. Relatives were trying to locate a missing family. Federal agents were searching for a man suspected of healthcare fraud. Both investigations were moving toward the same house. On the 13th of January, federal agents arrived at the Florida property to arrest Anthony. This time, authorities would not leave after knocking. Anthony was found outside the house and taken into custody. Agents immediately noticed that he appeared physically unwell. He looked weak, struggled to walk, and appeared unsteady. When officers asked where his wife was, Anthony said she was upstairs sleeping. When they asked about his children, his answers became unclear. He could not provide a direct explanation of where they were. Authorities entered the house. The shutters were closed. The lights were off. The interior was dark. A strong smell filled the property. Officers searched the rooms and found Anthony's wife and all 3 children dead inside. They also found the family dog dead. Evidence suggested they had been dead for approximately 2.5 weeks. During that entire period, Anthony had remained inside the property. Someone had continued sending messages to relatives, claiming that the family was sick, traveling, or staying off the grid. The truth was now inside the house. Anthony told officers that he had swallowed a large amount of an over-the-counter medication in an attempt to end his own life. Authorities rushed him to a hospital. During the investigation that followed, officials reported that Anthony confessed. According to authorities, he admitted responsibility for killing his wife, his 3 children, and the family dog. While still receiving medical treatment, Anthony was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of animal cruelty.
County Sheriff Russ Gibson, and I wanted to give you the latest update on the death investigation that occurred at 202 Reserve Place in Celebration. Deputies made contact with Anthony in the home along with federal agents and he was immediately detained. A safety check of the home was conducted where deputies discovered 4 deceased individuals inside. The home was immediately secured and a search warrant was obtained by our detectives. The reports of the autopsy determined that the cause of death of the 4 decedents inside the home to be homicide. Anthony has cooperated with the investigation and he has confessed to killing his wife Megan Todt, 42 years of age, whose date of birth is January 28th, 1977, and their 3 children. Alec Todt, 13 years of age, born September 26, 2006. Tyler Todt, 11 years of age, born December 30th, 2008. And Zoe Todt, who was 4 years of age, born July 23rd, 2015. Anthony also killed their family dog, Breezy.
The discovery devastated everyone who had known the Todts. Friends, neighbors, relatives, patients, and former employees struggled to connect the accused murderer with the man they remembered. They knew Anthony as a husband who had been with his wife since their teenage years. They saw a couple who appeared committed to each other through almost 20 years of marriage. People did not remember a home filled with constant arguments or open violence. Neighbors had not reported a history of screaming, fighting, or repeated police visits. Anthony regularly spoke about his children with pride. People believed he loved them. Many trusted him around their own children because he coached soccer and volunteered with young people. Yet inside the Florida house, his entire family had been destroyed. The contradiction became even more disturbing because Anthony remained there after the deaths. He sent messages designed to stop relatives from asking questions. He claimed everyone was sick. He claimed they had traveled. He claimed they had gone off the grid. For more than 2 weeks, he controlled the story while the victims had no voice. A confession appeared to answer who was responsible. It did not answer why. That question would lead into Anthony's collapsing finances, his healthcare fraud, his changing statements, his claims of memory loss, and a violent secret from his own childhood. Subscribe to North American Crime Case before we continue. In Part 2, Anthony withdraws his confession, blames his dead wife, writes a 27-page letter from jail, and presents a version of the murders that physical evidence refuses to support. How much trust should anyone place in a man whose story changes each time the evidence turns against him? Anthony Todt confessed after authorities found his wife, 3 children, and dog dead inside the Florida home. Then he denied everything. He claimed he remembered nothing. Later, he produced a detailed account blaming his wife, the one person who could no longer challenge his accusations. To understand how his life reached that point, investigators examined what had been happening beneath the family's successful image. Long before authorities entered the Florida house, Anthony's financial situation had started collapsing. He had a respected clinic, a strong professional reputation, and a family living in an expensive community near Orlando, but he was spending beyond what he could afford. He owed money to creditors, his employees had gone without payment, his business was failing. Investigators believed he used fraudulent medical billing to delay the collapse. The alleged scheme involved charging a government healthcare program for treatments that never occurred. Claims were reportedly submitted for patients who no longer needed treatment or had stopped attending the clinic. The total reached close to $130,000. Patients who saw Anthony during his final months in Connecticut later tried to remember whether anything about him seemed alarming. Most said no. Some noticed that he looked tired or less focused. Others said he had gained weight. They assumed he was stressed. His office had been searched in the middle of November. Soon afterward, Anthony left Connecticut for Florida. He told federal investigators one return date. He gave employees a different explanation. He appeared to be managing several stories while pressure closed in from every direction. The financial evidence provided a possible motive. It did not fully explain the murders. Investigators and reporters then uncovered another disturbing part of Anthony's history. Decades earlier, Anthony's father had been a school teacher, husband, and father of 2 young children. To outsiders, he appeared respectable and trustworthy. Behind that image, he was involved with another woman. Prosecutors said he decided that his wife stood between him and the life he wanted. He arranged to have her killed. Anthony's father recruited a young former student who trusted him. He gave the former student the access and means needed to carry out the attack. Anthony's father then arranged to be somewhere else when the attack occurred. The young man entered the family home and shot Anthony's mother in the head. She survived. Anthony witnessed the attack. He was only 4 years old. The age carried a disturbing similarity to the later Todt case. Anthony's youngest daughter was also 4 when she died. Authorities uncovered the murder plot. Anthony's father and the former student were arrested. His father was convicted and spent approximately 10 years in prison. The former student received a lighter sentence after accepting a legal agreement. For a period, Anthony's mother continued supporting her husband and said she did not believe he had planned the attack. She later divorced him, took the children, and moved to another state. Anthony's father continued claiming that he was innocent. No one could prove how the childhood attack affected Anthony psychologically. Still, after the Florida murders, investigators and the public struggled to ignore the connection. At 4 years old, Anthony had watched violence destroy the safety of his own home. Years later, his 4-year-old daughter died inside another family home. The childhood history raised questions, but it did not excuse or explain the evidence against him. Anthony's confession also did not last. After his arrest, he pleaded not guilty. He denied killing his wife, children, or dog. He claimed the confession given after his arrest was false and should never have been accepted. Then he began shifting responsibility toward his wife. She was dead. She could not respond. She could not defend herself. She could not challenge his version of the final night. Several months after his arrest, Anthony called his sister from jail. The conversation was recorded. During the call, Anthony said he could not remember what happened. He claimed that the entire period from around Christmas until his arrival in jail had disappeared from his memory. He said he did not remember the deaths. He said he did not remember being arrested. He claimed that the entire period had become a blank space.
What's up, Chief?
It's good to hear your voice.
I've been held in isolation. I still am.
Are you okay?
I don't remember anything pretty much over Christmas and the first week I got here. I don't remember coming here. I don't remember anything. After the events, what happened, all that kind of stuff. I have no idea where I was, where I am.
The memory loss claim soon created another major contradiction. Anthony said he remembered nothing about the most important period. Yet when he needed to accuse his wife, he suddenly recalled specific events, conversations, movements, and details. The court appointed the public defender's office to represent him. Because he faced 4 first-degree murder charges, the court refused bond on the most serious counts. Anthony remained in custody. During the summer after his arrest, Anthony wrote a letter to his estranged father. The letter covered 27 pages. Inside the document, Anthony presented the version of events he wanted his father, the public, and eventually a jury to believe. He declared himself completely innocent. He denied responsibility for the murders. He also denied committing healthcare fraud. Anthony wrote that he loved his wife and children, and that they meant everything to him. Then he accused his wife of killing their children. He claimed she took their lives while he was away from the house. He then alleged that she ended her own life in front of him. Anthony blamed her alleged actions on depression, a serious illness, and other personal struggles. He described her as a woman who had reached a breaking point. The physical evidence contradicted his accusation. Investigators determined that his wife's injuries did not match a self-inflicted death. The nature and location of her wounds did not support Anthony's claim that she had killed herself. His entire defense depended on a version of events that the evidence rejected. The rest of his story raised further problems. Anthony described the day as peaceful. He claimed he spent time playing with his children. He said his wife woke up feeling better than she had felt for a long time. He wrote that he left the house for a small errand involving a necklace for his 4-year-old daughter. According to Anthony, he later decided to sleep away from the family. He claimed he slept inside a vehicle, overslept, and then discovered that the vehicle would not start. He said he walked back to the house the next morning. Anthony claimed that when he returned, his wife told him she had experienced a vision. According to his letter, she believed the world was about to end. He alleged that she killed the children because she believed she was freeing their souls before the end of the world. Anthony then claimed his memory stopped. He described a blank period lasting close to 2 weeks. The next moment he supposedly remembered was federal agents arriving at the house. The story offered Anthony a convenient escape from every damaging part of the timeline. He remembered events that moved blame toward his wife. He forgot the murders. He forgot his confession. He forgot the weeks he spent inside the house. He forgot the messages sent to relatives. His claimed blackout covered the period in which the strongest evidence pointed toward him. The timing of the supposed vision also failed to match the estimated time of the deaths. The physical evidence continued contradicting his account. Anthony's letter included another disturbing detail. Despite claiming that he was an innocent man grieving his family, he wrote confidently about his future. He discussed lawsuits he planned to file. He mentioned creating an organization in his family's name. He referred to insurance funds that would support him. The tone suggested that he expected to leave jail, receive money, rebuild his life, and convince people to believe his story. That future never arrived. The case moved slowly through the legal system. Prosecutors eventually removed the death penalty as a possible punishment, citing concerns involving Anthony's mental state. More than 2 years after authorities entered the Florida home, Anthony's trial began in the spring of 2022. Prosecutors presented evidence of his financial collapse. They described the unpaid debts. They explained the healthcare fraud allegations and the false medical billing. They showed how Anthony's clinic had failed. They compared his changing statements with physical evidence that remained consistent. The jury heard about his original confession. They heard his later denial. They heard his claim that his memory had disappeared. They heard his accusation against his dead wife. Anthony chose to testify in his own defense. Under oath, he repeated the account contained in his letter. He claimed his wife had killed the children. He maintained that he had been away from the house when they died. He continued blaming the woman who had no chance to answer him. The jury considered his testimony, his confession, his financial problems, his changing stories, and the evidence from the house. On the 14th of April 2022, the jury found Anthony Todt guilty on every count. He was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for his wife, and 1 for each of his 3 children. He was also convicted on the charge connected to the death of the family dog. Even after the verdict, Anthony continued declaring his innocence. He told the court that he had not been present when his children died. The judge rejected his claims. Anthony received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The court added another sentence for the animal cruelty conviction. The punishment ensured that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. During sentencing, the judge described Anthony as a destroyer of worlds. The phrase captured the complete damage caused inside the Florida house. A wife lost her life. 2 boys lost every future they should have lived. A 4-year-old girl never had the chance to grow up. The family dog also died. Relatives lost an entire branch of their family. Neighbors lost the people they believed lived safely beside them. Patients learned that the trusted physical therapist they had recommended was living behind lies, fraud, and murder. The legal question has been answered. A jury rejected Anthony's confession reversal, his memory loss claim, and his attempt to blame his wife. The court held him responsible for killing his entire family. The deeper question remains harder. What drove him to that point? His finances were collapsing. Federal agents were investigating him. His employees were unpaid. His clinic had closed. His fraud was being exposed. His expensive lifestyle was failing. His childhood had been marked by extreme family violence. Those facts offer context. They do not explain why he decided that his wife, 3 children, and dog had to die. The person who deserves the least attention in this case is Anthony. The victims deserve to remain at the center. A mother devoted her life to raising and homeschooling her children. A 13-year-old boy lost his future. His 11-year-old brother lost his. A 4-year-old girl died before she had the chance to understand the world around her. Their lives should not be reduced to the lies Anthony told after their deaths. Thank you for watching North American Crime Case. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe financial pressure drove Anthony Todt to destroy his family, or do you believe the full motive died inside the house with the victims? Subscribe and turn on notifications for more North American crime cases examined from the first warning sign to the final judgment.